Hi, guys. We are on our day 3 of this introduction to the ease of life, to our retreats, to getting deeper into like what you can expect, and to just kind of give an understanding a little bit like the difference from this and maybe other traditions out there. So glad you're here, and if you have any comments or stuff, just please comment, and we might get back to you.
And we're live. Welcome back to the space. This is the third day of Body Being Walking the Ease of Life retreat.
Or introducing it.
Introducing it, but it ended up being a retreat. And in a way, you got to taste this, and we just have been really enjoying everyone's feedback and your participation with this. This has been delightful to watch the unfolding for you as well throughout these past 3 days. And the first day we really opened up the space of just getting kind of a broad taste. A lot of people said they liked the energy of the space. They just felt something, but they didn't really know what was going on, but something stirred up within them. And then the second day we got really physical. Henrik really went into the body being walking the ease of life and like what it looks like externally, and almost like the masculine perspective, the powerful perspective of what a body being is, that there is like this power within us. And today we thought we would kind of wrap it, kind of like put a bow on it a little, bring a feminine touch to it. If you could, Henrik, start us off by maybe sharing with us what the body being walking the ease of life looks like more internally, and like the feminine aspects of the body being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we kind of have to when we talk about the body, the beauty of the body is that we feel it. The emotions also, we also feel it, and we actually perceive our thoughts. And that we kind of came into this body when we were a little child, like in infancy. But as in infancy, little baby, our body was totally open. We were relaxed. If you feel the body of a little baby, everything is kind of very soft. The belly's out, the little Buddha belly.
The baby belly.
Yeah. And, the gaze is open and kind of open and questioning and just kind of perceiving. And in a way, that is where we kind of, at that place, we lived in truth naturally. We lived in our being. We just lived without kind of this, without kind of putting goggles on top of without looking out through different goggles. And then we kind of put on these different masks of gender, of color, of nationality, of family, of strong, pretty, all these things. So we put on all these kind of masks, but that creates a body. But that creates a body that is connected from an ego, that is like, we have created an identity. So we have stepped into the body, we stepped into the emotions, we stepped into the mind kind of as an attack. We're like forwardly focused. We're in life. You kind of have to get into life. So that's kind of like we're feeling like, ooh, life is exciting. We get excited about, cheating, or excited about all the stuff that is, as a teenager, you're like, ooh, have you heard about this? Have you heard about sexuality? Have you heard about this? All this stuff. But then we've kind of created this, the ego it holds on because it creates a sense of understanding and knowing, but that knowing comes from ego. It comes from identity. So when we talk about body being, is to kind of allow yourself to become aware that there is a being behind this, that you can return to being. And from here, then you're also allowing the body to breathe just without any doing. You're allowing, suddenly it requires faith, because it's actually you have to dare to release control. So understand that the ego don't really want to release, because ego holds on to it and is afraid what would happen if we release these dramas.
Safety.
Yes.
Safety.
So the ego kind of, when we look out on life, we start identifying with life. But we look at life as, I like this, I like that, that is wrong, that is drama, that is. So we're always kind of deflecting. We're always just in opinion. So we never get time to just be without opinion, to be at ease. So the ease of life, or the ease of being, is realizing there's this garden behind the ego that you can return to. And it actually is completely hidden, but you've tasted it many times. You could have had alcohol, or done an ayahuasca, or you just had sex, or you went up a mountain, or you took a bath, or you smelled and ate something beautifully. You suddenly feel like blissed out. So sometimes people are like, oh my God, I feel so at peace. So then we're like looking for friends and people to kind of gather that kind of always, that outside. So we think outside, when we're just experiencing this with nice friends or in a community, then we're like, okay, we're kind of focusing outwardly. But that's when like the ego is actually still there.
Or like trying to, okay, I got to recreate this and capture it. And this is how it's going to be all the time. This is what makes me happy, feel good, blissed out.
So then we automatically, our ego will start to look at, well, I like the stuff that I like, and I don't like that stuff, so I'll try to push that away. So we're still internally unconscious. We're still in a battle of where to go. And what to do. So we can feel at ease sometimes, or we can have done stuff, but then when we don't have it, we suddenly are locked into a pandemic. Suddenly we are not able to do the things that make us happy. So that happiness is still part of ego. So that our identity. So that is kind of where it gets a little tricky, because you can have these awakenings of doing different stuff. Either you get an education, you get really rich, or you get good friends, or you do some meditation, different stuff, and you have a sense of awakening, one level, which a lot of people do these days, because there's so much information. We're becoming so democratic. We are so enlightened.
Like you could go on Google, and like it would be quite a lot of work, but you could still, in a way, learn everything you need to know, like almost nearly on Google,
right?
For free.
That's where like America has been beautiful. When I came to America, like seeing all the books of all traditions out there, and then we of course trying to like specialize these things. But then if you see, sometimes you see teachers of different knowledges, you see still that they have reached a certain level of awakening, but a lot of people can get kind of stuck eventually still, because the body holds energy, or your ego holds energy in the body, and it will actually try to fight you. So when we create these retreats, because when I realized I was lucky enough that I kind of was born with discernment. That is very kind of rare. And I was also lucky enough that I had an upbringing where I was able to stay in it, because we all have tastes of it, truth. But with my sign language, with different kind of uncomfortable things in my childhood years, made me kind of remember and be awake enough to discernment was kind of my first awakening. and I stayed there. So still I was become aware of all these emotions and sexuality, all this stuff, but I didn't really engage with it. And yet I realized that it's still in our body. We're still unconsciously, we're still taking on our parents' judgment, our society's judgment, our race, our gender's judgment. There's still all this ego going on because that's how we think, that's what human being is. So we have kind of forgotten that the real human being can be, when you start nurturing this in a garden, there can grow forth another way of existing as a real human being from being open as a little baby again. So that is kind of what this journey, that I also realized that my body was stuck in these things, that I had to kind of peel off these layers of ego to come through other new levels of awakening. But at that time, my ego is still with me, and then it's starting to block me again, and then there is the potential to keep going this ease of life. So that is where we are creating. I realized that these groups or these retreats and stuff are actually helping us to both remember discernment, but also remember that in a group with more people around, we are creating an energy dynamic that can kind of overpower the ego in a sense. We can it creates an intention where the energy kind of moves us along. So we're daring to simplify and daring to honor the simplicity of the path onwards is there. But a lot of times we also have to be aware that the ego is fighting us with drama and holding us down, but then that there is energy that we can kind of harness and enjoy that suddenly will guide us. So that is what we've kind of created the system, so that we can be guided onwards. And me as the teacher is also guiding the onwards with discernment, but also with everybody together, kind of enjoying and nurturing and growing together. So that is when we kind of create this inner garden. We become more focused on, they realize that just being comfortable out there it's easy to think if everything is perfect out there, then we are going to be perfect internally. But we kind of forget that the outward is not the inwards. That just, then we have kind of created that, we have adapted to the ego. So, but when you kind of allow to see the ego, it's uncomfortable because the ego is resisting you. But when we, like yesterday, I talked about ease and moving, allowing the faith to move beyond it, then suddenly you find the garden inside, and then you can be at ease when externally things are chaotic. Then you don't get so dependent upon outside nature, outside friends. Then suddenly you see nature inside. You see friendliness inside. You see love inside. Happiness inside. It comes from the inner world and not from the external world.
Is that kind of like what they mean, like everything is inside? Like I never really fully understood that until like I would say in like a couple of years ago when I started experiencing like my inner garden kind of like more shining forward, especially in 2020 when like it was so chaotic and all of a sudden we got sent into hibernation and all the restrictions happened. And then it was like, well, I could be suffering by like kind of alone in like our apartment, or I could like maybe find like there was like an opening for my inner garden to kind of come forward.
Yeah. So sometimes we don't necessarily, it's hard to understand your inner garden before you experience it. And for me, I kind of had to see that there had to be, realize that there's different ways of looking at the body, but there seemed to be some hidden place of truth inside. And that's what suddenly I realized that now I can start touching upon it, because the body is actually tangible. It holds energy, it holds resistance. So suddenly, since I also studied chiropractic, I could actually almost like also evaluate myself, look at myself, because that's the hardest part of evaluating yourself, because our mind, our ego tends to be like, oh, I understand it. I'm done. I'm woke. I'm awake. I'm woke. But that's
woke and done.
I'm woke and done. I've become the teacher now.
I figured out life.
But that's usually the ego that yearns for this. So the ego will kind of yearn for stuff, and the awakening that can't be yearned for too much. It has to unfold kind of in spite of you. So we look at it. I looked at myself, my old body, and then suddenly seeing how the body kind of shifts and energy changes within the body, and the body softens, kind of gave me kind of validation that stuff was happening, even if it's kind of untangible, this journey, because it kind of happens from energy. It's like subtle from energy consciousness, and then suddenly you meet a resistance like the pandemic, like she said, and then suddenly you realize that, wow, you're enjoying something that before would be completely unenjoyable.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, but how on so many levels, like chaotic 2020 was for me, but personally it was almost like this invitation opening for me, for to experience inner peace, and that there was this something inside, because everything was so chaotic out here that all I could experience was in here.
Yeah. So that's where, like, a lot of times this feels like a perfect time for people to start realizing that we might be more dependent upon the external than we thought.
Ooh.
And so, but that makes people more awake that maybe there is an inner garden.
Yeah.
So that's why we are seeing that the need for like having retreats and stuff is like, there are people that are ready to jump on the wave, the bandwagon, and start like opening up that internal garden.
That's so beautiful. It's literally like, I mean, what I experienced was like that, your inner garden, like, it's like a journey. It's like back to like love. It's like a journey of like love.
Yeah. It's kind of falling in love with yourself, because that inner place is like at ease, at love, at bliss, at grounded, fearless in a sense. But you will go through these levels kind of gradually over time, because the body takes time, the energy, the ego takes time to release. So that is why, like, this
We've got lots of hearts and comments going on. I think there's some energy here.
It's a little too far away to see, but thank you guys for commenting, and you can comment later when we post this as well. So I think this was kind of like the last day of the 3-day, kind of a little bit going through the energy, because this isn't just words, it also carries energy. So if you have watched all three, you might have almost gotten a little mini retreat, and it also gives you a kind of a potential to kind of tune into online or physical into retreats in the future that will come up.
And I kind of, it's funny because I've even seen it like physically myself. Like the first day, like every day I looked kind of different, and today was the day I felt most at ease too. So I I was so that was when I explained, was like yesterday. I was like, wow, we like literally are in like a retreat energy because I'm feeling this within myself. And that's, I think, what it is when the retreats, when we do it together, it's less about you, it's just the energy. You can move through things kind of quite rapidly.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like in your brain. You're just like, whoa, you feel things. And all of a sudden you're like, ah.
And you might actually notice changes more like a few weeks later or a few months later and suddenly be like, oh, wow. So it's kind of miraculous, actually. But it's almost a little bit too far-fetched for the mind to that's why we talk about it, because it kind of to showing up for this, it kind of requires faith in a way. It's just like requires that, or that you something feels that you feel pulled in some way.
Yeah.
That it feels like, oh my God, maybe I'm ready for this. Maybe I'm ready to be a little uncomfortable, but also to taste something more.
Well, the journey back to yourself is very uncomfortable and also super loving.
It's both at the same time.
So get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
cool.
I feel complete here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I feel like we're officially like closing the retreat circle bubble. Yeah. And thank you for being here, and not only like thank you for witnessing us like coming out, but also like for participating. That has been beautiful to watch the unfolding for everyone, and these will be posted so you can come back to them at any time.
On your highlights.
Yep. Yeah. You can come back to them at any time, and we'll be popping in here within the next short while.
Talking more about the retreat.
To talk more about the retreat. But for now, we wanted to just thank you for being here, and have a wonderful
day
of body being, walking the ease of life. Ole. Thank you.
Thank you.